Hi, everybody. I'm going to try to do this and not drop my phone. I just dropped my phone. I had started shooting a video, and then I got clumsy and dropped my phone. Well, anyway, I want to start this with saying this is kind of a restaurant review, and it's not at the same time. And it's more like a review of something else, if that makes sense. Because I just feel like, you know how it is when you get to thinking about something and you really feel like you need to share what you think about it. That's what this video is. I know I've probably mentioned it on here previously, but actually, now that I sit here and think about it, yeah, I have mentioned it on here previously. What it is, I was over about a mile from here at a nearby McDonald's. And what it is I'm on Yelp, as I've said before. I actually like Yelp a lot. And I'll tell you why. It's not because I'm a negative Nancy and I post mean-spirited reviews. If you know me personally, you know that I don't have a mean bone in my body. I could be a bit of an asshole or a jerk on occasion, whatever you want to call it, but 99% of the time, I'm not that way. I will just look at you and be like, whatever, and just walk away, normally. There's that 1% of the time that, I just, get really pissed off, mad at somebody, or annoyed, and I'm a little less than charitable. That's the polite version. I mean, it is what it is. But anyway, I was just, like I said, at McDonald's near where I'm sitting right now. I won't say in Florence, Kentucky right now, waiting on Tony to get his handsome self off of work. I won't say where I am other than that. But anyway, I noticed that particular McDonald's had like a 1.5 stars on Yelp. I don't know what's going on there. I'm not going to... I 9 times out of 10, if I feel like leaving a review on there, I will. But usually, I'll just go in and say, check in what they have. And then, just say, running through to get some food or whatever. Just, because I don't normally feel like doing a review most of the time on there. Unless, either something like the staff... and or the food and or the decor or something warrants me saying something about it. I mean, the boy that waited on me at McDonald's just a little while ago was just super nice to me. I mean, it's like you get in there and you're like, it's like, you have this menu and you're like, all of a sudden, your brain poops its pants and you just, I can't decide what I want. I finally ordered. I won't say what I got here either, because it's neither here nor there, because I've already eaten it. But anyway, he was nice. That's all I'm going to say. But yeah, it's like I had to scoot over here to get Tony because it's about time for him to get off work. But anyway, I noticed, like I said, it was like a bar and a half, 1.5 stars, review of the place. Well, most McDonald's, and I've noticed this, usually have a very low rating. Because, well, 1, it's McDonald's. And 2, some of them actually have not only staffing issues, but, food supply issues. And especially after COVID 3 years ago in 2020, I got to tell you, a lot of people just have the patience of a flea. And I'm not saying that in a mean-spirited way, mind you. I'm just stating, if you stop and think about it, stuff has changed since, everything went into lockdown and came back out after 2020. There's a lot of places like McDonald's, for example, or, like Burger King, or the restaurants are all having staffing issues. It's like, as a matter of fact, just in the, last year in 2022, about a year ago. It was like what? Like maybe January or February of last year of 2022, I shot a video on here, and I talked about a kid having a conniption at the IHOP near my house over them not cooking his eggs right. I mean, I'm like, seriously. If you want to see what I'm talking about, after you watch this video, it's, I'm sitting in darkness kind of like I am now. And last year was like, things to say or something like that. I forget what I called it. But I talk about that. I also talk about in the same video about my neighbors that used to live across the street, that they were a piece of work too. But that aside, I'm talking about mainly Yelp here. Yelp is a mixed bag. It's like, because see, when I leave a review, I always try to leave at least 3 stars, at least. Just because I'm a tough grader, apparently. I mean, I don't know, I could be a real a-hole to workers, but, it's like with, like I said, COVID and what have you. I'm not as hard on them just because I realize they might be shorthanded. I mean, it is what it is, people. I mean, and it's like I've said before, it's like with, the fact that we're coming out of COVID, like we've, been dealing with all this stuff with COVID and what have you, and it's like people actually need to, learn to be more considerate of each other. But, a lot of the bad reviews are from like pre-COVID, or if they're from like, last few months. They're like I had to wait 20 minutes. Sweetie, were they shorthanded? If they were shorthanded, you need to step back and say, you know what? They were shorthanded. I might have been hangry, but it's not worth me being an asshole to these people. It's not. It's literally not worth you being mean to them and going on like Yelp and saying, I had to wait 20 minutes for my food. But were they shorthanded? Or was there something going, or was there like a giant group that just got seated before you came in? You should ask yourself that. You need to put that in perspective. You do. You need to seriously put that in perspective. It's like Tony and I were watching Christina Ricci's movie on Lizzie Borden, for example. And this is an example of what I'm talking about. I told Tony, I said, any one number of things could have happened back then. You have to take what actually happened with a grain of salt, and say, okay, well, perspective, like when Lizzie Borden was alive, most people didn't think a woman could murder her parents. What I think happened with Lizzie Borden and her dad and stepmom is that Lizzie Borden went into a fugue state and killed them both. That's what I think happened. I mean, and I've said this over my movie reviewer page, when I did a review on it, and I mentioned this with Burning Bed in particular, the movie review for Burning Bed over there, is I actually know of somebody. My dad told me when I was a kid that when my dad was a kid living in Hazard, Kentucky, there was this lady that her husband was a fall down drunk who beat her. It's just like, Farrah Fawcett's movie Burning Bed. I mean, it's just identical to that. Like, that whole story was her, more or less. But it didn't have... That lady's story was based on a true story from a lady in Texas. But a very similar story happened here in Kentucky that my dad knew. And what ended up happening is the lady finally snapped. She had enough of it. And the husband went out, got pie-eyed, 3 sheets to the wind, came home, beat his wife. And she's like, her and her daughter packed their stuff up quietly in the other vehicle. And the daughter was hiding out in the other vehicle. And the dad came home, beat the mom, and then passed out drunk on the sofa in their living room. The lady threw a bunch of oil on him and put a bunch of oil through the house and lit the man up like a Christmas tree. I mean, she burnt him up. This was back in like the 50s, I'd say 1950s. And, this was before battered wife syndrome and blah, 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 and all that fun stuff. Well, she ended up going to jail for the rest of her life. As far as I know, she's still in jail. And her daughter ended up with a couple of friends of my dad. And, I'm just like thinking, wow. I mean, but yeah, it is what it is. But anyway, like I said, you need to think about, the situation. Because it's not always, what they say on Yelp isn't necessarily what happened. I mean, it's two sides to every tale or story. But one thing I love about Yelp is the fact that, it's like they can't pay for reviews on there, the companies. I've seen on Facebook where Yelp was advertising and people, companies to get on there and, pay to advertise on there. And I saw a bunch of people boo-hooing about, but you get all these negative reviews and blah, 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 blah. Well, it's like, yeah, you can't, it says right on there that you can't pay for them to take off the bad reviews and whatever. You just have to suck it up. And one person was like, yeah, then they get a hold of your credit cards on there as a business, and they won't let you turn off the advertising or anything, even if you've basically got like several negative reviews and what have you, and you've done your absolute best to straighten it out or whatever. But it's like, it's six in one hand, half dozen in the other. What do you do? One thing, and I like this about Yelp, is, not only do you get honest, fairly honest reviews, even when people are aggravated, you also get the folks like me who actually write nice reviews on the other hand. I'll give you an example of, a location that's on there that has my good review and like 2 reviews. One of them is my review, and the other one is a negative review from like before. And it's like the first person to actually review the company. There's a Cooper Funeral Home out in Alexandria, Kentucky. Now, I went and looked the page up, because I wanted to talk about, I wanted to give them a glowing review. Because I was on Yelp and I discovered that they were on there too. Well, what happened is I noticed that there was like, maybe 3-4 reviews on there. This was before I added mine. And, the first one to review was a very angry, reviewer on there that, like, I don't know what happened. I can't tell you what happened. You'll have to read the review. And, I haven't talked to the person that reviewed it. It's, immaterial to me, like, what happened. Not that I don't care, but it's none of my business. That's how I feel about it. But the person was unhappy because I think they were talking from a point of grief is what I think it is. Because they just lost a family member. And they were really upset about it because, like, things went wrong, and, like, they were wanting this, this, that, and the other thing, and they, for some reason, Cooper couldn't give it to them, and they were disappointed, and said so. I'm like, okay. But then, back in 2021, and I know I mentioned this, but my dad passed away on the 4th of July of 2021. Well, I did my review of Cooper in, like, December of 2021. And I talked about not only my dad in it, but a friend of mine that passed away, like, literally, like, a month or two later. It was crazy. And then another family member passed away, like, right around Christmas time that year. It was just, it was like, I'm like, okay, folks, you need to stop dropping dead on me here. Seriously. I mean, it was just like 1, 2, 3. It was just like, like really close together. But I wrote this very nice, like, it was like maybe 4, 5 paragraphs long. And like I talked about, they did my dad's funeral, and like they were just amazingly kind, and they were great, and then I talked about, they did my friend's funeral, did a really good job, and I said, I had another family member pass away just a couple of weeks ago. I said, and I'm fairly certain that they're going to do a good job with that family member, and they did, from what I'm told. I didn't go to the funeral. It's just, things were going on in my life to where it's not that I didn't want to go to the funeral. It was more like I couldn't, for reasons I won't discuss here. But yeah, I wrote this 5-star review. It's like, and I should mention, if you haven't been on Yelp before, it's a rating system of 1 to 5 stars on there, and it is what it is. But and I wrote this really glowing review of them. It's still on there, a year and a half later. Approximately, it's still on there, and I meant what I said, and I one thing that they will do, and I noticed this with Cooper, that they actually if it's something that they feel like that needs to come off the page, Yelp themselves will actually take the review off. Excuse me. They'll actually remove the review themselves. So, like, for example, Cooper has like 3 or 4 reviews that came off because they were rather incendiary. It's no offense. But I know I talked about me being a Yelp elite. I enjoy being a Yelp elite. I do, and I'll tell you why. What it is I get free stuff occasionally from Yelp, and it's worth it. I mean, well, it's free in the fact that I didn't have to pay cash money for it or put it on my debit card, but I get to do, I'll get, free food every once in a while for, the fact that I did reviews. And, at some place, and then I have to do a review of that. Well, it's like I will, and it's like I take pictures and do a review. And I'll get Tony. A lot of times I will try to get Tony to go with me, especially if it's on one of his days off and it's something that I'm 90% sure he'll enjoy. Like, for example, earlier this year, I think it was in February. Tony and I went to a place off of Red Bank Road over there in Cincinnati, Ohio, because I got free food there. It was they gave you a card and they said, go through and mark off, which places you go to. They'll mark off what so I got free gumbo and free ramen noodles, and the ramen noodles were good. I actually got fried plantain taco. I never had one of those. It was actually very interesting. But this place is really good. It's over there off of Red Bank Road by MedPace. It's right over there by their campus. And oh my good Lord, it was wow. And of course, 4 Mile Pig was there. 4 Mile Pig's main store is down here in Alexandria. I was it was on my list of, on the card for stuff. I'm I've had 4 Mile Pig before. I couldn't get to all of them. They gave you 2 hours to eat this big long card. It was 12 different places. And the place had like gelato and ramen noodles and Latino tacos. That was the plantain taco I was telling you about. And I'll tell you what, the stuff that I did have. Oh, and I also had a free shot of alcohol too. But this place was huge. It was one of those like mall food courts. And I enjoyed it. I mean, I told Tony, I said, we come back here, I'm going to definitely get a bunch of try those plantain tacos again. And I might try the coffee too. They had some kind of coffee and I didn't get a chance to try it. So, we'll try and go back there. But yeah, I mean, it's stuff like that. And I gave that like a good review. Just like, I think maybe 2 weeks ago, it was like the end of February, beginning of March. It's March now. I went over there to Mount Adams, which is also over there in Cincinnati, and did a Yelp event. And granted, unlike the one that I did back in February, with Tony, I went there by myself to the second one. I had an okay experience, and I said so. I said, the drink was fine. Like, I ordered one of their free appetizers. Never got it. Never got to try it. I was like, I ordered it, never got it. And I said so on there. And then the community manager, who I've met, sent me a message on there and said, you should have said something to me. And I'm like, I had so many other things on my mind right then. I was like, I don't care. It's not the end of the world. It was free food. I mean, yeah, I've normally said, don't pass on free food unless there's something bad attached to it. Yeah, it's like, that's how I feel about it. It's like, like I waited like what? Like I ordered it and waited like half an hour, 45 minutes for it. This whole place seemed to be disorganized. But what was crazy is the only people that were actually at this place were the Yelp Elite, because, they were having a private event there. And I'm like thinking, either these people are just that disorganized that, like they should have had this stuff prepped and ready to go like the night before. If they knew, which they did in advance, okay, we're going to have this private group come in, and we need to get all our stuff prepped and ready to go the night before, if it had been me running it. And I'm just like, it was so disorganized. I was just like, I was very diplomatic about it, and I won't say where the place was here, other than it was in Mount Adams. But it's just, I'm like, I could tell the place was disorganized, and I'm like I said, my husband and I might come here forever in the neighborhood again, and I might think, came home and told Tony the truth. I was like, we don't go to Mount Adams that often. If we go to Mount Adams, I will tell you this, one of our favorite restaurants is in Mount Adams. It's right up the street from Cincinnati's Channel 9. It's Andy's Mediterranean restaurant. We absolutely love Andy's. We do. We love it. They have a award-winning meal or dish called shish tawuk. And if you know me personally, I am the definition of a picky eater. I am. I openly admit to being a picky eater. I have been my whole life. Tony and I get on Open Table and, reserve us a table so that way they know we're coming. But, this shish tawuk, it's like we were there for like the first time, and like I couldn't decide what I wanted. So I got a combination platter. Well, I started eating that shish tawuk. I mean, it's like, seasoned cubes about this big. It is really good. And I'm like sitting there eating this going, what is this? It's like I couldn't tell what kind of meat it was. It was meat. You know, and I'm like sitting there going, this is really good stuff. You know, and I'm like, just chowing down on it. And I asked the lady, I said, what is this? I said, what is this stuff? It is really good. And she could tell what I was holding in my hand. And she's like, oh, that's chicken. If you know me personally, I am not a big chicken eater. I'm not. I'm like, I have to be in a mood to get chicken. I'm not a big fan of chicken. And, if you know me personally, you know why I'm that way. It's just, but that it was just some of the best chicken I've ever eaten. And it didn't give me an upset stomach or anything. Like, one of the last times I was in there, I told a couple that was like their first time, I'm like, get the shish tawuk, the stuff is good. But anyway, here comes Tony now. Well, anyway, I'm going to pause here, and then I'll pick this back up in a little bit, alright? So hold that thought, and I'll be right back. Bye.